Our story begins long ago in a place called Ur, a city filled with people, markets, and gods made of stone and wood. It was a busy and wealthy place, but it was also a place where people had forgotten the one true God. Instead, they worshipped idols, false gods they had made with their own hands. But in the middle of this city lived a man named Abram. Abram was different. He believed in the one true God, the creator of heaven and earth. And because of his faith, God chose Abram for something extraordinary, something that would change the world forever. One day, God spoke to Abram. His words were clear and powerful, but also filled with promise. God said, Abram, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. Imagine hearing that, being asked to leave everything familiar, your home, your family, your comfort, and set off on a journey without knowing the destination. It would take incredible trust. But God wasn't finished. He made Abram a promise. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. This was no small promise. God was saying that through Abram, the entire world would be blessed. And despite the uncertainty and the unknown, Abram believed God's words. He trusted God's plan. So Abram obeyed. He gathered his family, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot, along with their servants and flocks, and set out for the land God would show them. They traveled through deserts and hills, passing rivers and valleys. Nights were spent under the stars, and days were filled with the challenges of the journey. But through it all, Abram kept his faith. Finally, they arrived in the land of Canaan, and there God spoke again. To your offspring I will give this land. Even though Abram and Sarai had no children and were already old, Abram believed. And as a sign of his faith, he built an altar right there, offering thanks and worship to God. But the journey of faith wasn't easy. Time passed, and still Abram and Sarai had no children. Doubt must have crept in. Had they misunderstood God's promise? Would they ever see it come true? One night, God spoke to Abram again. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram was honest with God. He asked, O Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? God's response was gentle and full of reassurance. He took Abram outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, so shall your offspring be. Imagine standing under a sky filled with countless stars, hearing a promise like that. And despite his old age and the years of waiting, Abram believed. The Bible tells us that Abram's faith was credited to him as righteousness. But God didn't just give promises, He made a covenant. In those days, covenants were serious and binding agreements, and God's covenant with Abram was like no other. God promised that Abram's descendants would be as numerous as the stars, and that they would inherit the land of Canaan. Even when things seemed impossible, God's promise remained sure. Time passed, and God changed Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of many nations. Sarai's name was changed to Sarah, meaning princess. These name changes were more than symbolic. They were reminders of the incredible future God had planned for them. And finally, after years of waiting, the promise began to take shape. Sarah, despite being far past childbearing age, gave birth to a son named Isaac. It was a miracle. the first sign of God's great plan unfolding. Through Abraham and Isaac, God's promise continued. And generations later, through Abraham's descendants, the world received its greatest blessing, Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world. Abraham's story is one of faith, obedience, and trust in God's promises. Even when the path was uncertain and the waiting was long, Abraham believed. And because of his faith, God's plan for a nation and a Savior was set in motion. So, what can we learn from Abraham's journey? Sometimes God calls us to step into the unknown, to trust Him when we can't see the whole picture. It's not always easy. There are moments of doubt and waiting. But, like Abraham, we can choose to believe that God's promises are true, and His plan is always good. When we trust God, even when it's hard, we open the door for His blessings, not just for ourselves, but for those around us, and sometimes for generations to come. Abraham's story reminds us that faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does.